Hello, I'm Citrus, and you're looking at the Reborn 100 Dijeh. I'm gonna do something a little different and narrate this build video for you guys to hopefully give you something more useful. So first up are the weapons and the beam naginata here, which is pretty simple, and I'm not a huge fan of these effect parts because they look pretty gummy. The whole thing looks kind of more like candy than it does a real weapon. As for the bazooka, this came from the Hyakushiki 2.0. This middle part is silver on the Hyakushiki, but it's gunmetal just like the rest of the bazooka, so I painted it gold just for a little extra color. Unfortunately, I wasn't paying attention, and I didn't make it match the clay bazooka on my Rick Diaz. And around the back of the bazooka in the ammo clip, there are no rounds. So this bazooka is completely empty, even though the Hyakushiki does include rounds for you to put in the ammo clip. And next is the beam rifle, which is completely the same. And I really enjoyed putting this together because there are just so many pieces to it. It's way more enjoyable to build than beam rifles typically are because the usual gun only has like 2 clamshell pieces, you put it together and that's it. But this one's pretty involved and the color separation and detail is pretty cool. So this whole video is about 14.5 minutes long, and I don't think I have that many things to say about the build. So there will be some bits where I won't be talking. Okay, we move into the head. So there's a very tiny little piece you have for the mono eye, and there's no mechanism connected to it that helps it move. So the only way to turn it left and right is for you to remove the top of the head and do it by hand. There isn't like a full skull or anything inside, but the detail is basically on par with a master grade. I painted in some gray details all over the head because without any color, the whole head is just blue, and that's kind of boring to look at. I also used one of the extra Amuro Ray decals on the head to show the pilot. Okay, and for the chest, pretty simple here. You have this piece in the middle that basically holds everything else together, and all the polycaps basically attached to this. And this is kind of like an inner frame, but obviously there's no mechanical detail on top of it. But aside from that, you get plenty of articulation that you would normally expect. Like here you can see the swivel outie chest joint going in, and put some gunmetal on the top and bottom just to make it look a little bit more interesting. And as I was putting together the waist here, it seemed like there was going to be some good articulation because of how many joints are in it. But as you will see later when I put the waist on, that it really can't do that much, just because that red piece that you see there runs all the way through the middle of the chest into the waist, and that's the single thing that basically keeps the whole thing from moving very much. And now I'm putting on the sides, and the little small pegs on the pieces on the sides don't really go into anything in the chest, which was kind of confusing. Nonetheless, it does stay in place pretty well, but it's just kind of curious because they don't like hinge out or anything like that. So they're just sort of floating inside of the front chest piece. And then here is the neck, which is unfortunately way too short for the kit. I think maybe an extra 1.5 millimeters or so would be ideal, but as it is now, it can't really look up or down very much. The cables in the back, surprisingly, don't really get in the way too much. You can see it rotating pretty well, but up and down is basically out of the question. So hip joint has a pretty solid chunk of gray plastic in the middle of it, basically like an inner frame. Pretty standard for master grade articulation, even though this isn't a master grade. And I was incorrect in the unboxing. There is some detail on the inside of the skirt pieces and stuff. I've just painted it in gray so you can see it easier. Nothing too fancy, but you know, at least there's something there. It's not just blue expanse of nothing. And let's see. So that clip on the back is for the naginata, which doesn't really hold it too well. And a single red thruster there. I painted the tick marks in red to kind of match it, and I think it looks okay. Pretty simple construction for the side skirts. This is actually really solid, by the way, even though the polycap there isn't really covered up by anything. It hasn't fallen off on me yet, which is really nice. And then getting all the waist skirts in position to line up with each other is a little bit tricky because all the angles and lines are kind of weird. But yeah, so now I'm putting the torso on the waist, and you will very quickly see that there's not that much movement. Side to side is pretty good, but forwards and back not really happening, and rotation is also not really happening. Okay, and this is the little booster pods on the back. Nothing too much to really talk about here. In general, most of the parts are actually undergated. I was pretty surprised because I don't think Bandai ever planned to make Expo exclusives of these that would be like clear or metallic or whatever. But it's nice that they thought ahead. But the gating on these blue bits that I'm putting into the wings right now are really weird. They're gated on the flat sides of the surfaces, so you have to be really careful cleaning up the nubs to not gouge the surface at all. And I don't know why they didn't just put it on the tops and the bottoms. I mean, I guess they don't want you to damage the little locking teeth that hold it actually together. But it's not a huge deal. The polycaps in the backpack that actually hold the wings up are not in place very well. They're pretty loose, so I'm going to have to probably glue them in place afterwards. And this is a little bit for the arm, which is pretty nice actually. These little pistony bits that you see here actually do help hold it up, and they click into place in two positions. I really like how they look with a little bit of paint on them. If you didn't paint it, it would just be like a gray stick, which wouldn't look very interesting. But I think I'm going to rotate around here now. Yeah, you can see that it moves, and it looks pretty cool. I really like that, even though it doesn't really do anything. I think it's supposed to be like a weapons rack or something like that, according to the wiki, but obviously none of the weapons this comes with go on it. So I don't really know. It's also the way it's built. It's also not really meant to support any weight, so I wouldn't really try to put anything on it either. And the arm is a pretty straightforward construction. So most master grades these days, I believe, actually are just built like this. And when we go into the forearm here in a second, you'll see you just go straight into a blue piece, and that there's really no inner frame, but it's really, really solid. Like, there's no gap or space in any of the kit, really. So the whole time that you're putting it together, it feels really dense, even though there's no inner frame. Okay, and let's see, there's an extra decal that I put on top of the wrist there. The kit comes with quite a few extras for you to sort of customize the look beyond just the diagram it gives you. Okay, and then the arm's going in, and here is the articulation. So pretty solid bend right there, and here's something I really like. As the arm bends back, it sort of pulls the round part of the joint into it. And I know it's just a quirk of the geometry of the arm, like it's not intentional engineering that way, but it still looks really cool when the arm is sort of extending into its full position. and that's the shield on the left side. So that right shoulder and the backpack are the only two parts of the body that have any real seam lines. Everything else is really well hidden and taken care of. And by now you've probably noticed that there hasn't been as much plastic clicking or anything as all the parts are coming together. And it's because everything is really silky smooth, because this is a relatively new kit with higher quality materials than older kits. Nothing was particularly frustrating, and right here on the knee there is only one polycap that you put in on one side of the knee, not two polycaps, even though the two sides are identical. I somehow messed it up on both knees, so I had to take both knees apart as I was putting this together. I was kind of surprised that the one polycap actually holds together the knee pretty well. It supports the weight of the whole kit okay, but the polycap right there above the ankle is a little bit iffy. So the design is supposed to allow it to slide left and right so that the foot can rotate left and right just a little bit more than what a fixed position would allow. And that's really great in theory, but the whole kit, because it's so dense and solid, puts a lot of weight on just those two tiny polycaps, and because they're not fixed in place, the finished kit does feel a little bit wobbly. Not so bad like GPO3 bad, like it'll just fall over, but you know, it's not like the most solid feeling thing. And at this point we're pretty close to the finish line. It's got one more piece to put on the back of the leg here, along with the last power pipe, which, as mentioned in the unboxing, is TPE, so I didn't paint it because nothing really sticks to this stuff, at least nothing that I have, so I just didn't bother. Would have been nice if they could have found some sort of other plastic or even maybe fabric alternative, but I realized that would have obviously increased the cost, and then this wouldn't be a 3,500 yen kit anymore, probably. And you can see they move out of the way just fine for the bend, and you're not going to get more than a 90 because of how the leg is shaped. Maybe a master grade would have been able to figure out how to get you more than that, but I'm pretty satisfied with how much it can move as it is. Okay, so we pop the two legs into the body, and we are all done. So this is the completed Dijeh right here. I'm going to get some top coat on this and come back to you guys with the full review. Pretty satisfied with the overall build, and I think the comparison of this kit to older master grades is still pretty correct. So that's all for this build. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.